At the University of Toledo, we are surrounded by experts. And we tap into those experts here on Rocket Talk.
Hello, I'm Ben Myers, and this is Rocket Talk. Facebook has rules about what users can and cannot post on its platform. This includes hate speech, sexually suggestive content, and incitements to violence. But what if everyone didn't have to abide by the same rules? Well, as it turns out, that's exactly what's been happening. On September 13, the Wall Street Journal published an expose that analyzed internal company documents at Facebook. They found that while the company claims everyone is subject to the same rules, Facebook has in fact built a system that's granted exemptions to high-profile users. This practice is known as whitelisting. Today, we're going to talk about this scandal and Facebook's role in our public conversation. With me, I have Dr. Tasha Dunn, who's an assistant professor in the Department of Communications, and Joshua Williams, who's a PhD student in experimental psychology. Both do research related to social media. And full disclosure, Tasha's also my wife. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks for having
us. So let's start here with a little bit of context. What are the mechanisms that police content on Facebook for us ordinary folks, and how does that appear to have been different from those who were granted X-check accounts?
So Facebook has what are called a set of community standards. And interestingly enough, the impetus behind creating these standards is this statement: to ensure everyone's voice is valued, we take great care to include standards that have to include different views and beliefs, especially from people and communities that might otherwise be overlooked or marginalized. So this kind of idea of inclusivity sits in the background of the creation of these standards. So if any standards are violated, Facebook will remove the posts, and AI can flag the posts, a user can flag the post, and once that happens and Facebook deems this a violation, your content is removed, but it's based on a strike system. So you get one strike and it's kind of a warning, you can stay on Facebook, but if you get 2 strikes, then your content is, you can't use Facebook for a day, and so on and so forth until, I think it's about 5 strikes, you would be, your account would be deactivated for a period of time. So those are the standards that basically police everyday users.
And how's that different from those who appear to have X-check accounts, Josh?
Well, as the journal article discussed, people who have an X-check account, a cross-check account, are exempted entirely from the rules that the regular users have to abide by.
Yeah, and who appears to have been whitelisted?
Well, it's supposedly people who are newsworthy, influential, popular,
sure.
Who have a large following, millions plus of followers. Basically anyone who Facebook considers to be PR risky. So if the user can cause Facebook an issue by complaining about their post being removed from the platform, they would be whitelisted.
Oh, that makes sense. So let's talk about why a little bit, right? These elites and newsworthy folks don't have to abide by the same algorithmic rules as the rest of us. Why is it? Why would Facebook grant these exemptions?
I guess I think of 2 reasons. One, sort of picking up off of what you said before this, is it's PR risky, right? So if Facebook removes content from a high profile user, that decision is going to reverberate. It doesn't just sit with that, kind of everyday user. The decision reverberates, and if the decisions are controversial, or even worse, a mistake, then that makes Facebook look bad, right? And I think secondly, the content of high profile users is almost always profitable. So the less that content is policed, the more potentially profitable it is for Facebook.
Exactly. If a post being removed causes a user uprising, we're going to boycott Facebook, that's lost revenue for Facebook, and Facebook is a public company. They have shareholders to answer to. They have to maintain the business.
Oh, sure. Well, and one thing that I think is interesting in this expose is that the Wall Street Journal garnered a lot of this information from internal documents. These aren't things that Facebook made public. And Facebook has been notorious for kind of keeping its algorithms a secret. What role does this secrecy play, and why do you think Facebook isn't more transparent with its algorithms?
Well, I think obviously the algorithm is a trade secret. Mm-hmm. So if you release how your algorithm works, a user could game the system, could use it to serve their own agenda. So it's back to keeping the business running the way they want it to make to make the money. But so, it's interesting how the algorithm works, and maybe another part of why it is kept quiet is that posts and users get what is called a meaningful social interaction score, an MSI score. And how you get a higher score is the propensity of the post or the user's content to go viral. So the more vitriolic the content, the more prone to being shared the content, the higher the score gets. So it's not about anymore seeing what your friends and family are doing or seeing things that are interesting to you. It's about promoting posts that will go widespread, will go viral.
Wow.
Yep. This is exactly what makes Facebook competitive, right? You don't want to expose the puppet master or the wizard behind the curtain, because once you do, if you know what makes a viral post, you're going to, insert viral posts, and then this totally changes the game. So I think Facebook keeps a competitive edge by keeping that secret.
It was, sorry.
No, please.
There was a former investor and executive, Chamath Palihapitiya, who talked about exactly how they are aware of the emotion generation that the algorithm causes, and that it is on purpose to make you feel something about the post. It gives you that. You've probably heard the dopamine rush, where you see something, you share it, and someone likes it, and there's really nothing better than someone liking what you shared. So you come back and you do it more, and that's the goal of the algorithm, is to keep you coming back and doing it more.
Yep.
And if that algorithm's operating for us ordinary folks, right, and not for other those who are deemed to be elites, I think it's worth asking the question about, what does this scandal tell us kind of about inequality? What do you think are some of the implications of some people maybe having different rules about their speech or more access to freedom of speech than other people?
So my immediate answer to this is it tells us that certain people are more valued than others. It tells us who and who isn't important, which that's why I began with saying, what is the impetus behind these community standards? If the impetus is to ensure everyone's voice is valued, we're certainly not seeing it in this practice, right? So actually, this act is violating the motive behind creating the standards in the first place. And I think what happens when this occurs is it creates a spiral of silence, because there are certain voices that are more prominent, and then the voices that are marginalized don't speak up, don't speak out, and even if they do, it's not promoted. So it can create this kind of echo chamber of privileged voices.
Yeah, it actually does the opposite of what the company, as you said, promotes, that they want to democratize information. They want to give the regular person the same microphone that the New York Times has.
Yes.
And that's, what Facebook does with XCheck, with Crosscheck, is to reinforce that same power structure that's been in place. So you have to have a New York Times to be heard. You have to have 100 million followers to be heard. So yeah, they've just reinforced what society has already had in place. Yeah.
Well, also interestingly, kind of, through this cross-check, saying, well, look at us, we're double checking this content.
Right.
But that's not happening, right? It's not happening. So it's making Facebook look good from the outside, but when you dig in and do these internal audits, which is what the article was based off of, you're seeing that that's not occurring. They're talking the talk, but not walking the walk.
And it's important to note that there are 5.8 million accounts in the Crosscheck program.
Yes.
So with 15,000 or so human moderators, how could they possibly police the Crosscheck program?
Well, we talked a little bit about the problem here. Let's talk a little bit about the prescription. How do you both think Facebook should gatekeep? And what should it do with these, quote, risky PR people?
So I kind of struggle with this answer, I think, ideologically in some ways, right? I don't know if Facebook can gatekeep. I think there are a lot of issues that prevent that from occurring, right? Like, first, why would Facebook want to gatekeep? It is incredibly profitable. It's currently valued at $1 trillion. Like, why fix something that isn't broken if we're talking in terms of profitability? I think secondly, Facebook is stretched thin. We have to question who and what technology, AI is doing the gatekeeping. And, as you mentioned, I mean, you have, I think it's like 2.78 billion users.
Right.
I mean, this chronic underinvestment in content moderation because you don't have the resources. So I think Facebook is in a bit of a bind, and I don't know if Facebook is able to gatekeep. I would like to think so. So this is where I ideologically struggle with its answer, because I think the gatekeeping should fall on the users. Like a Facebook user needs to be their own gatekeeper, their own truth seeker. This to me is a bit of a kind of neoliberal response, an individual response, but I think media literacy is imperative.
Right.
I think that, you can't solely trust and rely on your newsfeed. You have to seek out alternative outlets. You have to, meet the wizard behind the curtain.
Very great. Thank you. And that's all the time we have today. I really thank you for tuning in. And my co-host Jason Hibbs will be back next week.